about why the level of nitric oxide in people's bodies have declined. It sounds like progressively over the past decades. What do you think is a reason?
Well, there's several reasons, because first we have to define how the human body makes nitric oxide, right? So we discussed this pathway of this enzyme in the lining of the blood vessels, and really it becomes uncoupled. And so this is the Western diet, Western lifestyle, which leads to oxidative stress, inflammation, and immune dysfunction. And all that leads to a loss of nitric oxide, which then further exacerbates those. But the problem is sugar, Joy, in a carbohydrate-rich diet, because sugar and carbohydrates are metabolized into glucose in the body, right? And glucose, as the name implies, is glue, right? It sticks to proteins and prevents their conformational changes. And we can measure this in the blood. When glucose sticks to hemoglobin, this is called hemoglobin A1C, right? And so it's a long-term measure of blood glucose control. But what happens is when sugar sticks to these protein and enzymes, it prevents them from doing their job. So hemoglobin has to undergo a conformational change when it goes from the arteries to the veins to offload oxygen and pick up CO2. If sugar stuck to this molecule, it can't undergo its conformational change, and we develop hypoxia. And that's the reason people, the problem from 2020 to 2024 during that worldwide pandemic was people developed hypoxemia because they couldn't pick up oxygen, they couldn't deliver oxygen. And the same thing happens with the nitric oxide synthase enzyme. Sugar sticks to it, and it can't produce nitric oxide. And we get oxidative stress. It leads to BH4 oxidation, NOS uncoupling. So that's the major problem, eliminating sugar. And then to resolve that, you got to eliminate sugar. The other pathway we discovered about 20 years ago was through the oral microbiome. The bacteria that live on the dorsal part of the tongue in our mouth are part of our microbiome, these symbiotic bacteria that are doing things that the human body can't do. And we and others published on this 15 years ago, that the bacteria in the mouth are there. Part of the microbiome is to produce nitric oxide gas. So anything that disrupts the microbiome leads to a nitric oxide deficiency. And what is that? Well, it's antiseptic mouthwash. 2 out of 3 Americans wake up every day and use antiseptic mouthwash, and 2 out of 3 Americans have an unsafe elevation in blood pressure. And that's causal. We and others have published, if you use mouthwash, you destroy the microbiome, you shut down nitric oxide production, your blood pressure goes up, you lose the protective benefits of exercise, and eventually you develop erectile dysfunction.
Well, I know people do tongue scraping. Would that cause any problems?
In our 2019 paper, we actually revealed that the patients who did tongue scraping actually had the best nitric oxide production, and they had the best blood pressure. But the problem was the people who were tongue scraping but then used antiseptic mouthwash were the ones we saw the highest increase in blood pressure.
It's the worst.
That's the worst thing. For tongue scraping is good. Tongue scraping with antiseptic mouthwash is the absolute worst.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other thing is fluoride. Fluoride is in toothpaste because it's an antiseptic. Fluoride's in most municipal water supply. Why? Because it kills the bacteria in the water. So the water that's fluorinated that you drink, that you bathe in, that you cook in, is eradicating the microbiome in your body, and it's causing enormous damage to the microbiome and shutting down nitric oxide production and causing chronic disease. So you have to get rid of fluoride. Fluoride-free toothpaste, get a home filtration system, and get rid of fluoride. And then the third big contributing factor is our antacids. And these are specifically what we call proton pump inhibitors, the things like Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium, Omeprazole, Pantoprazole, the prescription medications. So these medicines, again, this is based on clinical data. People who have been on PPIs for 3 to 5 years have a 40% higher incidence of heart attack, stroke, and Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So that's the observation. Mechanistically, we know because it's completely shutting down nitric oxide production. So if you get rid of fluoride, if you stop using mouthwash and start to restore the microbiome and get patients off of antacids, now you've kind of released the brakes on the body's ability to produce